Good evening. My name is Sean Finelli, and as Victoria Kilville explained to you, I am the director of the Higher Education Leadership and Policy Studies program, better known as the HELPS program. And I'm also the associate professor of leadership here at Hofstra University. And I want to thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar dealing with leadership careers in higher education. Certainly, as Victoria mentioned a moment ago, this is an ever-changing field. It is a field that continues to become more and more complex, but at the same time, more and more of value and efficacious for students who are engaged in higher education learning. So let's move on and see who is it that can actually benefit from this webinar. It will be any person who is thinking of joining a higher education institution, actually creating a pathway for a higher education career. It can also be advantageous to people who are currently employed in higher education and are looking for upward mobility and looking to strengthen their leadership skills. Tonight, I'm going to speak about not only the careers that are available to you, but also the changes that have taken place, the growth that has taken place, and I hope to touch on a bit of the future. If you go back in time to Harvard University, that's back to 1636, when Harvard was founded, it had a president and a board of overseers, and that was it. That was the administration. Now, interestingly, the president added a dean, and the reason he added a dean was he didn't like dealing with students. So the dean dealt with students. But that was really the start. That one move that that president made was the start of higher education, leadership careers evolving and becoming more complex. And over time, they have done just that. But part of the reason for higher education leadership careers evolving in their complexity is because institutions became more complex. Institutions at first were very simple. They had a very simple mission. The mission primarily initially was just to deal with the liberal arts and only with male students. And that has certainly changed dramatically to the institutions, the comprehensive institutions that we have today. So college missions changed. And we call these changing missions as they became more complex, focused on a multiplicity of purposes rather than a single purpose, such as a liberal arts degree. We call that mission creep. And so mission creep has actually created jobs in higher education. As pointed out, the jobs, rather the institutions became more complex. But not only has mission creep occurred in the university as a whole, it also has occurred in various units within the university. And we'll see some of that as we look at the tables of organization of a college or a university, and then begin to look at the responsibilities of each individual. So here is a typical table of organization. It can be called Board of Visitors, Board of Overseers, Board of Rectors, can be called most especially for most colleges and universities, a Board of Trustees. And the Board of Trustees hires a president. And the president is then charged with carrying out the policies that a Board of Trustees approves. And boards of trustees are appointed, they are elected, and in many cases in private institutions, the institution just simply looks for persons that will really be advantageous to fulfilling the mission of the institution by hiring, not hiring, but by bringing in members to the board. And many of those members are alumni or alumna. The president then has what is known as a cabinet, and this is the cabinet level. And so it's all the persons that report to the cabinet. Now, the president will have some ancillary positions reporting to him, and in many cases, this is an important position. There is a secretary to not only the board, but also an assistant to the president. So the president keeps the board advised, the board keeps the president advised of what their interests are, and the president what is actually happening within the institution. And that go-between is usually the secretary to the board of visitors or the board of trustees, and also the assistant to the president. And so we take a look at this chart. I'm going to really delve into two very important areas. One, the provost's position, and frequently called also the vice president for academic affairs. And the other is the vice president for student affairs. Most students who are interested in a career in higher education are usually looking for a career in student affairs. And so I'm going to spend more time dealing with that than the other positions that you see on this table of organization. The chief operating officer makes sure that the university functions in charge of buildings, maintenance, construction, renovations. The university advancement vice president is looking to raise money to support scholarships, to support projects, to support activities within the university. The vice president for strategic initiatives and public affairs, that person keeps track of records, not records for students, but rather what's going on in the institution, deals with a strategic plan, make sure that the institution is adhering to its strategic plan. And strategic plans are nothing more than a plan to implement the mission of the institution. And over here, the director of athletics very frequently reports to the vice president for student affairs. In large universities, that vice president for athletics might be a separate entity from a person reporting to the vice president for student affairs. So this is a typical upper level table of organization for a college and a university. Now, if you are looking to aspire to become a president or a chancellor, you're going to have a terminal degree or graduate from a specific program, typically a liberal arts degree, or perhaps a degree even in, I shouldn't say even, but also a degree perhaps in student affairs. We're going to look at not only the persons who need a terminal degree, but we're going to look at a number of different individuals beyond that level. So here we look at the chancellor or president. They're interchangeable titles. In some universities, the chancellor oversees a series of colleges. In other universities, the president oversees a series of individual colleges. And in some cases, the individual colleges are headed up by a president. In other cases, they're actually headed up by a chancellor. So these two positions or titles are interchangeable depending upon the university. Reporting to the vice president, to the president, is usually the provost or the vice president for academic affairs. And that is the person on the academic side of the house. That person has a lot of departments and functions reporting to them. That person is actually going to be responsible for all of the academic enterprise inside the classroom and outside of the classroom, hiring faculty, assessing curricula, creating curricula. All of that will flow through the provost's office. But in order to have that degree, again, usually a person has a terminal degree, a PhD or an EDD, typically a PhD in a particular discipline, maybe English, history, social sciences, mathematics. That is typically the road to the provost's position. Usually the provost has had experience as a dean, and in turn, deans, as you will see, will have experience as perhaps a department chair. So reporting to a provost is usually the vice president for academic affairs, if it's not the title of the provost. There are other people not reporting to the provost, but would need a terminal degree, usually a business degree, an MBA for finance, and the same would hold true for administration. Deans of schools usually are persons who hold a degree, a terminal degree in their discipline, so that the dean of law would usually be a lawyer with a law degree. The dean of medicine would be a doctor. The dean of humanities would have a degree in one of the humanities, dean of engineering, and so on. And so reporting to deans or associate deans of schools. The schools are usually discipline oriented, so a school of nursing, a school of engineering, a school of communications, a school of liberal arts. These will all have a dean, and then with that dean comes associate deans or assistant deans. And usually within the reporting scheme, you will have program directors who will report directly to either the dean directly or to an associate dean. And these directors run programs such as the program that I run. So I report to an associate dean in the School of Humanities. The department chairs, I don't mean to skip ahead, department chairs are then the ones that would be in charge of the English department, math department, biology department, nursing department, and so on. And then they have reporting to them the faculty in those departments. All of these require usually a specialized degree, that is a degree in a discipline, and a terminal degree typically. And the terminal degree meaning, again, a PhD or an EDD. The degrees that usually prepare people for careers in enrollment management could vary in a number of different ways. Computer science, it could be a number of different things. But the vice president for enrollment management, the vice president for student affairs don't necessarily need a terminal degree. Vice presidents for student affairs frequently do. I would say the overwhelming majority have a terminal degree, an EDD or a PhD. The vice president for student affairs has a dean of students reporting to them, the associate assistant dean of students reporting to the dean, and program director of programs within the student affairs unit report to associate deans. And then assistant program directors report to the program director. So these are a series of positions that typically require degrees in leadership. Enrollment management can very frequently have a degree in leadership. And that's what I'm going to talk about. The vice president for enrollment management could have the dean of admissions reporting to them, associate assistant deans of admissions, and people, perhaps some of you have had experience with counselors or associate deans, assistant deans that do the actual recruiting and the processing of admissions applications. What I'm going to concentrate on today are the examples of student affairs leadership. Academic advising is a significant addition, and that's one of the things where you had mission creep. When I went for my undergraduate degree, there was no such thing as academic advising. You simply were handed a catalog, you read what the requirements are, and then you hoped that you could get those requirements within a 4-year period. There was no person or persons that would help you to plan your course of study over the next 4 years. The admissions people, sometimes reporting to the student affairs, sometimes totally different. In a larger institution, it would report to enrollment management. In smaller institutions, admissions typically reports to student affairs. You have Res Life, certainly reporting to student affairs. These are people, of course, who deal with residential life for undergraduate and sometimes graduate students. They live in the residence halls. They have programs. It's not that they just simply monitor the students. They actually host programs for the students. They are very much a part of the learning experience, the quality of life in a college or a university. Outreach programs to help specialized groups. It might be students who have disabilities or unique abilities. It might be students who are in need of perhaps counseling of some sort or another. There are any number of outreach programs, volunteer centers, where students can actually go and volunteer, but it's coordinated through student affairs. Financial aid, a very, very important part of any college or university. These are persons who counsel students, who tell them whether they're eligible, how to go about applying for financial aid, either grant, Title IV grant, or a student loan. The Greek life, the clubs and organizations, fraternities, sororities. That's a very important part of out of classroom life. And so added to that are a number of other opportunities academic advisement, admissions was, I'm sorry, we went through this. I'm sorry that this is volunteer centers. We went this, sorry, it's a repeat slide. Sorry about that. Student activities. These are the clubs and organizations, the student newspaper, perhaps the club, well, not the club, but the organization that schedules concerts or schedules activities for students, schedules perhaps parent weekend, student athletic enhancement. These are persons who would actually work in the athletic department, but they help student athletes. They work with student athletes to be sure that their needs are being met with respect to the academics, making sure, for instance, that they're going to class, making sure if they need help, where they can find that academic help that they might need, or other types of help. So there are persons within the program that I direct that are very much involved in athletics. A lot of people wonder whether if I'm interested in athletics, is this the way to go? Career development and counseling, very, very important now. Helping students to understand the different careers, helping them to understand how to apply for a job, how to do a mock perhaps, or not how to, but creating mock interviews, helping the students to obtain jobs. I talked about financial aid before, athletics. There are many different aspects of athletics. Persons who perhaps aspire to be an athletic director or a vice president for athletics. This would be a program that they should follow, a master's degree in higher education leadership. And many of the students that have passed through the program have actually gotten that. Many of those students who have taken the program here at Hofstra were actually student athletes at the master's level. They were playing their 5th year. They have 5 years in which to play 4 years of athletics. They actually were able to use their 5th year to actually obtain a master's degree by using some of their undergraduate credits and the graduate credits required for the higher ed leadership program. So what are some of the other examples? Events management, students complete a higher ed leadership program if they're interested in events management, financial affairs counselor, we spoke about that, and a very, very important role, veterans counselors. Not as many colleges when I was going to college had even thoughts of a veterans counselor, even though the Second World War was ending and the Korean War was ending, and then the Vietnamese War was ending. This is a Vietnam War was ending. These now are counselors that really are helping veterans as they return to non-military life and actually seek a higher education. And they use their benefits, their GI Bill benefits, Montgomery Bill benefits, or the post 9/11 benefits that are now available to them. But they need to understand what those benefits give them, the opportunities that are available to them. So veterans counselors, very important. Academic associate deans work within the vice president's office to carry out different functions. So they may have different portfolios where they're involved with perhaps students advising. They may be another group that's involved with student affairs or student activities. So these are the assistant associate deans. Now, these deans are really coming into place because there are really a lot of new activities, new functions that student affairs units now are responsible for. And I credit student affairs as being a very, very important part. They have experienced what I talked about earlier, mission creep. They are taking on more and more responsibilities that are somewhat atypical of what some people thought of with respect to student affairs. Years ago, many people thought that if you talked about student affairs, you were talking about Greek life, or you were talking about clubs and organizations. Now you are talking about academic and student development. And again, things that we never thought of years ago. Certainly, as I pointed out, the importance of academic advisement, career counseling, personal counseling. Students need more and more help just sorting things out as they transition into an adult. And mental health counseling, very, very important. LGBTQ counseling. And most recently, here's something that one would never have thought of maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and that's food insecurity, dealing with students that have food insecurity. So these are some of the ways in which Mission Creek has added to the complexity and also added to the need for careers or career positions in higher education. So should you pursue a career in higher education? Are you passionate about helping students? That's really the question, first and foremost, that I ask. Do you want to become involved with students? Are you a people person? Now, there are positions where you don't have to interface with students. If perhaps you are dealing with the institutional research, if you like dealing with numbers, that's fine. But if you're really a people person, you really belong in student affairs. So when we look at it, we usually have students coming to higher education leadership programs because they had a great experience in their undergraduate career. They connected with the instructor. They enjoyed student life. They were head of a campus organization or actively participated in a campus organization, were part of Greek life, maybe came out of athletics. And if you had a leadership role or you participated in any of these activities, I'm sure they greatly influenced you. Influenced you to the point that probably like many of the students in a higher ed leadership program, that you have an epiphany when you realize, hey, you know, the activities that I was engaged in, that can actually be a career. I never thought of that. Yes, I'm a bio major, but I'm really not thrilled with bio. I really want to work with people, not with organisms, although people are certainly organisms, but not with little small organisms. I want to work with people and help to make a difference in their life. And so that's what really drives a lot of students to seek a career in higher education leadership. So you may really want to meaningfully influence students at this critical time in their life. This is a very, very important transitional point in an undergraduate's life. They are transitioning, as I said, they are coming into adulthood and they're not familiar with adulthood. And so there are challenges that they will face. You can help them with a higher ed leadership career in meeting those challenges and addressing those challenges. So do you want to work with students with diverse backgrounds? You may come from a diverse background and want to help similar students with similar backgrounds. Do you want to advise international students? Maybe you have had experience. Maybe you are an international student. Do you want to recruit students? Perhaps you were a student ambassador when you were at your undergraduate institution. Perhaps you were a first generation student or are a first generation student or work with first generation students. A very, very important role that has to be played in higher education. And did you receive advising or counseling from someone and that changed your life? It really sets you on the right path. Do you want to do the same thing for someone else? That's why people choose a career. Well, many people choose careers in higher education leadership. And later we're going to hear from Victoria, who's going to tell us why she chose higher education leadership. So, not sure which is a good fit for you? Well, again, go back and think about your personal experiences and simply, do you want to advise students? Do you want to impact enrollment policies? Do you want to connect to students to financial aid opportunities? Want to help students develop socially? Okay, can you work with students with different abilities? Do you want to work with students with different abilities and make a difference in their lives? So, can you grow? Yes, you can start out as an assistant associate director. Usually that would be an entry-level position in the field of higher education leadership, certainly in student affairs. You can then become a director of a program. Maybe it might be the program that is dealing with food insecurity. You then could be an assistant dean dealing with some aspect within the dean of students office. You could become a dean of students. You grow into that position and then grow into an associate or assistant vice president for student affairs. And definitely you can become a vice president for student affairs, but in many instances, universities are looking for a person with a terminal degree, although I know of many institutions, especially the smaller institutions, I don't mean small, but institutions unlike Ohio State or Indiana or Michigan or perhaps Notre Dame, there are institutions that will hire people with a master's degree in higher education leadership at the vice presidential level. But this is the career pathway that you would typically follow. So can you become a president? Yes, there are people that can actually become presidents of higher education institutions with a degree in student affairs leadership. So upward mobility is certainly something that a program in higher education leadership will provide for you. How much money will you make? On average, the median salary is $97,500 or $46.87 an hour. Now, understand what the word median means. The word median means half of the people in a career make more than that, and half of the people make less. You want to be on the more side, and a program in higher education leadership will help that to happen. So is it a growing institution? Yes, it certainly is a growing institution. We've had a little down, a turn because of COVID, but we're going to see probably a surge because people who stayed away, who took a gap year, are probably going to flood back to universities, and universities are going to see an uptick in the numbers of students that they're going to have to deal with. As that uptick comes in the form of an entering class, those students are going to be with the institution for 4 years. So it's not a case of, well, they'll only hire you for a year. This is a growing industry. And we're looking at more and more students coming from outside of the United States to the United States. That's a growing industry. Now, one of the other things, as I point out on the slide, is higher education is in a reopening phase. Not that the school's closed, but they're going to reopen fully. They're going to have more and more of the face-to-face classes rather than the online classes. Now, I will point something out to you, which is happening across the nation. Probably more than 300 colleges are now requiring students to be vaccinated in order to return to a face-to-face experience on campus, to residential life on campus. That remains to be seen how that is going to impact those growing enrollment numbers that I told you, because some students may actually not feel comfortable with a vaccination, and that could impact their attending college, or at least a college. They may then search about for a college that doesn't require vaccination, but that seems to be a growing number. I just point that out because, again, I pointed out earlier that we never know where higher education is going. It's always moving and always moving in a very good direction. But in this case, we are not sure how that's going to impact higher education institutions, the need or requirement for a vaccination. So the job outlook, the Department of Labor actually indicates that there's going to be a growth of 4% from 2021 to 2029. And that's probably about average for the nation. So occupations in higher education leadership are actually growing. So the job outlook for higher ed leaders is good. Now, why is that going to happen? Because we do see an uptick until about the year 2024, 25, where they may be a leveling off, but I think you're going to see that countered by perhaps a greater influx of international students. So good opportunities for good job outlooks for higher education leadership positions. So what does it take to obtain any of these positions? Leadership. You have to understand leadership. It's not only understanding leadership, you have to become a leader. So what is the role of leaders? The leaders lead teams, departments, projects, and they take the people that report to them and translate their vision or the vision of the institution to those people to really bring the people on the ground into a process of implementing vision. So it's really an exciting career. It's not a dull career. You actually see movement. You're constantly seeing change, change for the good. They help those who report to them to navigate their roles and their responsibilities. So you're helping people to grow in a professional way while you yourself grow professionally as you move with the institution in new and better and more challenging directions. So they really, as leaders, you are mid and senior level leaders, you generate uh, an alignment so that you bring the people within your unit into alignment with the commitment to the college and the college's mission and the unit's mission. So you are a mover, a shaker, a doer. You are a person that's going to move. Are you born a leader? Well, leaders have to be able to inspire, to be visionary, to build relationships, have to be approachable, have to be organized, have to be able to motivate, have to be able to lead people to attain goals. They have to be learners, and they have to inspire trust. They have to be prepared. So how do you become a leader? Are you born a leader? No. You learn to lead by observation. You probably saw great leaders. You may have worked in a department, in a program, as a student aide or as in an internship. And you saw people that really knew how to get things done. They knew how to work with people. They knew how to interface with people. So you can become a leader, certainly by observation. You can become a leader by experience. You may have actually had to lead a club or an organization, and you learned in the position how to be a leader. But most people look to a mentor, somebody that really helped them to sort out things, and probably may be the person that helped you to decide to become or seek a program, perhaps in higher ed leadership. So that person might be your mentor. And what that mentor will tell you is you need formal learning. You don't just get this all completely by observation, experience, mentorship. You have to learn. You have to go into a learning mode and a practicing mode. And we're going to show you how that happens. First, in order to get into a learning mode, you have to complete your undergraduate degree. You have to, if you have not graduated as yet, look to undergrad involvement. Try to get involved in clubs, organizations, perhaps working in the student affairs office. Connect with an administrator on campus, maybe the vice president of student affairs, a dean of students, a program director, a club advisor, and get some insights from them about what it's like to be an administrator on campus. Seek guidance, as I said, from a mentor. I mentored many a student when I was in my role. I began as a faculty member, a department chair, a division chair, an associate dean rather, a dean, a vice president for academic affairs. And then I spent 27 years as the president at Nassau Community College. In each of those roles, I was able to be guided, surprisingly, by a mentor. The mentor that I had was a person who was the president at Westchester Community College. And I remember explicitly his telling me that these are the things that he does, and these are the things that have helped him to be a leader. And I simply emulated what he did. And I think that I have, as a result, had a good experience as a leader. So one way also to learn about higher ed leadership is to take an entry-level job. And admissions is always a good place. They're always looking for people in admissions. Admissions is a good place to start and grow. Join professional organizations. There are any number, but this is a really important one, NASPA. It's the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators. You'll establish linkages with others, with peers, with people who are similarly interested in positions or on actual positions. Great opportunity to get jobs by attending one of their conferences. They have local units and they have a national unit. The national conference is coming up, I believe, in the fall. The local conference here on Long Island just occurred about a month ago. National Association for College Admissions Counseling, Association for Graduate Enrollment Management. These are just a few of the personnel, student personnel kinds of organizations. So the American College Personnel Organizations. The title student personnel, that's usually the people who work in the student affairs units. They're known as student personnel administrators. So join a local chapter and by all means participate. So what do I need to lead? You have to acquire a series of tools. You have a toolbox. Right now, it might be empty. You might not have the tools necessary to be a leader. These are some of the tools we talked about, some of the skills we talked about. Some of the skills are soft skills like communicating, building relationships with people. You have to be able to think, you have to be able to synthesize, you have to be able to move forward in so many different ways. So you need a set of skills, and you're going to obtain these skills by joining a leadership program at the master's level. So you get these toolbox, or the tools or skill sets, and what they do is they fill your toolbox. So as you move through the program, you're adding more and more tools to that toolbox. And in addition to that, if you're experiencing by working in an office as an assistant or doing an internship, you're also adding tools to that toolbox. So here is a typical program. It happens to be Hofstra's program in higher ed leadership. It's a 36 semester hour program, and you can complete the program in 4 semesters by taking 3 courses in each of the 4 semesters. So if you began in the fall, it will be fall, spring, and you would have your degree. The degree is a master's degree in education. The courses primarily lead to positions in student affairs. They're offered on campus, online, or a combination of both. The online courses are the same courses that you would take face-to-face on campus, and they're taught by the same faculty. So it's not a case of if you take an online course, you get a totally different course than an on-campus course or a face-to-face course. I teach both the online and the face-to-face courses, the same for my colleagues in the department. So it's not a case of you have a large number of adjunct faculty. These are all full-time faculty. We are full-time faculty who've had leadership experience. Our philosophy is theory to practice. We will teach you the theory, but we'll explain to you how to put it into practice because we've been there, we've done that, we've walked the walk. And so the program consists of 27 semester hours in content courses, 6 elective leadership courses, and an independent study, a capstone course, an internship, a project. There are competitive assistantships available. You have to apply through human resources for that. The experienced faculty teach the courses. I told you theory to practice is our philosophy. You can apply online, and Victoria will explain that to you. A GPA of 3 is needed, but I will look at a person who has less than a 3.0 to see their potential to complete the program. 3 letters of reference, a personal statement, why you want to pursue this program, and no GREs are required. So here are some of the courses. You'll learn about the history, the economics, the governance, student development, teaching and learning, contemporary issues, legal and ethical issues, student affairs leadership, how to be a leader, planning, assessment, and accreditation in higher ed. These are all of the core courses, the 9 core courses that I spoke about. Embedded in all of these courses is the concept of social justice, equity, and diversity in higher education. You have to, as I said, admissions requirement, complete the bachelor's degree. This is all what I have just said. If you complete this program or any other program in higher ed leadership, you can pursue a doctorate, and Hofstra also has a doctorate. The program I just described was the HELPS program, the master's program. That program leads into the doctoral program. that we have in educational leadership. And that program has 3 phases. The first phase, if you complete the higher ed program here at Hofstra or at another institution, you actually have completed the first phase or 30 credits of the 79 credit program, making the program a 49 credit program. Or if in some cases you're able, pardon me, to bring in 36 credits, and we can talk about that when and if the time arises that you're interested in this program, but that reduces your number of credits you take to 43. Phase 2 are a series of courses in 3 years, first, second, and third year. First year, an intro to lit review, quant studies, qual studies. You also take courses in the summertime for a total of 40 credits. So if you're going to complete only 49 credits in the program, because you brought in 30 from a higher ed leadership program, you can then say, where are the other 9? The other 9 are your 3 dissertation courses, where you propose your dissertation, you do your research, and you write your dissertation and defend it. So this is, again, a lead-in. What happens when you take a program such as this? You are able to certainly apply for deans of schools, the deans of students, and certainly vice president positions or careers. These are just some of the courses, and I won't go into them. These are some of the elective courses, and I won't go into those. Some of these elective courses can also be taken in the HELPS program. And then really, what does it take to be a leader? Or what happens when you lead? The leadership program will help you to understand theories in conjunction with case studies analysis, where you actually look at what happened in a particular university and how it either was resolved or left unresolved and the consequences of that lack of resolution. These programs will arm you with the tools that I told you are necessary. And it will help you in a very important thing that will be going on in your life as any leader, decision making. It will help you to make decisions. It will help you to deal with change. There are a number of different viewpoints and factors and associated with college leaders. And these programs, such as the one I described, prepare you to deal with those. You'll understand constructs associated with different issues. If you're dealing with problems in financial aid, problems in Title IX, problems with a non-motivated student. These are all challenges. These programs will help you to prepare for those challenges. They'll really predict outcomes. There's a program, a rather course taken that is planning, assessment, and accreditation. You'll understand how to set goals and how to then assess whether or not the goals have been met, what the outcomes have been. And you'll be able to control and guide the processes that really are the workings of the university. One of the most dramatic mission creep changes that occurred was the growing, overwhelming importance of student affairs administrators, student affairs leaders. If you look at budgets, as I do, you will see that areas where there is the largest growth in budgets is not necessarily in the academic area. It's as the student affairs units become more complex, have to deal with more challenges, more issues, more functions. That's where universities are hiring additional or new people. New positions are being created to deal with those issues. So at this point, I've done much too much talking, but I did it so that you would get a quick overview, you'd understand. But now I'd be only too pleased to answer questions. So if you unmute yourself, you can answer the questions. At the end, we're going to have Victoria just give you some words of wisdom about how to go about applying to the positions, rather not the positions, but the programs that we have here at Hofstra. Perhaps before we do that, Victoria, do you want to just talk about your epiphany, what decided you to seek a career in higher education?
Sure. What's interesting is, that definitely comes up, especially in my position working with candidates that are inquiring about it, that they had such a great experience in their undergrad that they want to pursue a career in it. I'm on the opposite end of that, where I really missed out on really taking advantage of the resources, whether it was, career advisement and academic advisement, knowing, really what am I studying, why this major, and then also the social aspect of it. So coming out of the undergrad, I realized, what a missed opportunity that was. And as I then tried to kind of sort and correct myself into my actual career, I realized that a lot of the components of what I had missed out on was something I now wanted to provide. So as I sought that type of career pathway, I started working, more in education and advisement and career development, and here we are. So for me, it was really on the opposite end. So now it's sort of like righting an old wrong for myself, where I can now provide those resources to students that are really just kind of going through the motions and not really sure what they need and how they need to tackle it. So it's fulfilling in that way for me.
Do we have questions? Well,
You hit everything, Dr. Finelli.
here's contact information. If you want to take a screenshot of this, I'll just move this out of the way. You can get rid of the picture here, but that's my contact information, sean.afinelli@hofstra.edu. And the information for Victoria, don't want to hide, oops, sorry. Don't want to hide her pretty face. Want to move this over. And there we have her. Can you see that? Again, if you're interested, take a screenshot, but it's very easy. If you're interested, go to hofstra.edu, grad apply, one word, or Victoria R. Cobell at hofstra.edu. Here's her phone number. Again, we thank you for attending tonight, and we hope that in the future we might see you as a student. Here is just the application portal. Everything is done online. So perhaps you want to just explain quickly how that happens, Victoria.
Sure. So right now, the summer and fall terms for applications are open, and we do operate on a rolling admissions basis. So you don't have to necessarily worry about any upcoming deadlines. So there's still plenty of time to apply. The application process is all done online. So once you navigate through to Hofstra's website, you can navigate to the graduate program study option, as you see listed here. Which is what you'll want to use in order to apply and enroll in a full program, as opposed to non-matriculated study, which is just to pursue individual coursework. You'll start your application, upload your transcripts, your references, your personal statement. I myself will do the initial review and then of course share it with Dr. Finelli for ultimate decision. But there's so much going on in higher ed that, if it's prickling at you to, learn more, definitely feel free to reach out to both Dr. Finelli and myself for more one-to-one advisement to make sure that the ideas that you might have in your future mesh with this type of degree study. So definitely take advantage of that. And it looks like we have a question. Quick overview of career development counseling program in higher ed. In terms of, it is coming to the close of the event, so it might be a lot of content to go over again. Was there a specific question that you had about career development and counseling in higher ed?
We have a significant office here for career development. Students are encouraged to use it. As I said, they bring employers into the university to meet with students. They arrange for that. They help students to prepare their resumes or curriculum vitae. They help the students with mock interviews. They have any number of different events. So it's not just if a student needs something, they have to go to the counselor. They certainly can do that, but the counseling unit is actually running a number of programs and students attend them. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's really a growing area. There are so many different jobs out there that students are not aware of. So that a student graduating with, let's say, an English degree They say, well, now I have an English degree. How can I use it? Career counseling. That's where they go. That's where they'll get that answer. And then they'll be amazed. Wow, I didn't realize I could do this or I could do that. So that's becoming very important. The coursework for the program, I'll go back and share my screen. When you say the coursework, I'm just going to go down just so I don't have to go through everything. So here is the coursework. Hopefully you can see that, Ms. Thomas. There are these courses. They are all 3 credit courses. You would take each of them. Now you can take them in any sequence, even though they are listed 370 through 378. You could start at 373. We offer them in groups of 3. So in the fall, you could take 370, 371, and 372. They will be offered online. The program offers courses online asynchronously. That's an important piece. Asynchronously means that you don't have to go to a Zoom session at a particular time with your classmates. You work on the material at your leisure when you have time, but you do interface with your students. There is interaction, required interaction with your students and with the faculty member. So all of these courses are offered asynchronously. So in the fall, you could take 70, 71, 72. In the spring, 73, 74, 75. In the following fall, 76, 77, 78. The history of higher education, the economics and finance of higher education, how colleges are financed, the governance, talking about the roles, the very roles that we talked about, from the trustees all the way through faculty and students, how students are involved in the governance of a college or university, how students develop at the college age. And that's important to understand student development. If you're going to deal with a student, you have to understand how students are developing. I remember I told you they're going through a transition. And so that's what you would understand through this course. How teaching and learning takes place. Not how to be a teacher, not how to learn, but rather how teaching and learning takes place, how courses are being taught, the addition of online courses, the difference between, as I pointed out, a synchronous course and an asynchronous course, the value of both, how students are not tested, but how students are, student outcomes, learning outcomes are assessed. Contemporary issues. Here, there's just everything. I mean, from, as I pointed out, food insufficiency or insecurity, I should say, not insufficiency, insecurity, LGBTQ, the problems with mental health issues, financial aid, the questions of is college going to be free, are loans going to be forgiven? So that's all covered in contemporary issues, dealing with the very issues that are taking place. Legal and ethical issues. There was a time when colleges and universities were dealt with by the courts in loco parentis. The college was in place of the parent. Whatever the college said, it's as if the parent were talking to the student. No problems. Now we are in a litigious society, and the courts are playing more and more of a role, and a significant role, in decisions that are being made with respect to how colleges function. So that's important to understand cases. These are cases that are seminal cases. These are historic cases, landmark cases that will now dictate how higher education has to be conducted, because the courts, as high as the Supreme Court, has decided. Student affairs leadership, very important course. How to be a student leader. What are the different units that I just went through in much greater detail? What are the different units in a student affairs unit? And then finally, I talked about planning, assessment, and accreditation. The triad there, they're all linked. And that's something that's constantly going on in any college and university. Then there are, pardon me, there are don't know where they went, but there are 3 courses. Oh, I'm sorry. I think it should be, I guess they're not here, but there are other courses. You can take 2 elective courses in higher ed leadership, and you can take a capstone course, which can be either an internship, can be a project, can be a paper. Does that help? I'm not sure if that was a sufficient answer to your question. Good, thank you. It's a master's program. Yes, this is a master's program. There is no counterpart. There is no counterpart. It's not a degree in development and counseling. It's a degree in higher ed leadership. It looks at the whole spectrum of higher education. It really gives you an understanding of how a university functions and what the roles of everybody in a university and what the needs and what the mission, how to carry out the mission, more especially that latter, how to carry out the mission of a university. So it talks about every aspect of higher education. So it prepares you. Now, if you have a background in counseling, then you may also be able to apply to a particular unit within the area of student affairs. If they have perhaps a mental health counseling position, it might require that you have a counseling degree. But this is not a counseling degree. This is a leadership degree.
Okay, well, I think we definitely covered a lot of the territory of higher ed, and I thank you so much, Dr. Pinelli, for making that so thorough and really from just top to bottom, and even beyond the student affairs, which tends to be the traditional, trajectory for a lot of students. Just the back of the house type of roles and all of the implications of that is really great to be able to get a read on that. But I thank you so much for your time, Dr. Pinelli, and for putting this together for us.
It was my pleasure, Victoria, and thank you very much for attending.
Great. Well, I will connect with all of our attendees after the event. So if you would like to have more of a one-to-one, or if you'd like to get in touch with Dr. Pinelli, you'll be able to do that. And we look forward to working with you and potentially receiving your application.